In this video I'm going to talk about two things. I'm going to talk about something called a div, and I'm going to give you an introduction to ID selectors. By the end of this video we are going to have a simple three-piece web page with something called a header, something called main content, and something called a footer. Okay? So let's just get started. In Notepad++, I have doctype template open. I'm going to save it, file, save as, and I'm going to make a new folder. I'm going to call it divs practice. I'm going to call it divs practice. Make sure I choose the correct file type, and it is HTML. Save it, give it a title. Okay, so for starters I should probably explain what a div is. A div looks something like this. div, div. Okay? Now a div really doesn't do much of anything all on its own. We have to do things to it to make anything happen. I could put content in here if I want. But there's nothing special about anything that happens to that content. So if I run it in Firefox, you're just going to see content of some kind or another, just like I typed in there. It doesn't have any kind of formatting, it doesn't have any kind of style, it doesn't have anything to it. We'll think of it as a naked container right now, okay? But we can add some style to that naked container. If I used the element selector for div to make a style rule, div, brackets, and then have some sort of a declaration, sky blue, save it, refresh it. I did something wrong, didn't I? I forgot to use my style tag. I make mistakes still. Sometimes when I work a little bit too fast. Style type equals text slash CSS. And then down here, close it. Now, you can see if you don't add the style element in there, it actually shows up as content. But as soon as you put the style element in there, there we go. Our style appears. Now, here's what's special about a div. A div is something called a block level element. A block level element stretches all the way from left edge of the page to right edge of the page by default. Okay? It takes up an entire line. We've seen block level elements before. We've seen them in paragraph. We've seen them with tables are also block level elements to start with. The UL and OL are block level elements. They take up an entire line. The H1 through H6 headlines are block level elements. They take up a full line. Okay? So div is just a naked, empty block level element where we can add some style to it. Now I want to show you how to use what's called an ID selector. Okay? An ID selector is done up here in the style sheet, and it looks like this. Pound symbol, or the technical term for that is octothorpe, and then you give it some sort of an identifier, some sort of name. I'm going to call this one header. Pound header. Then down here I have to apply it. ID equals header. So what I've done is I've made an association between this here rule and this div down here. See? I made a style rule, I called it pound header, and down here I applied it to this div. Now, IDs can be applied to any element that we want. The only simple thing about IDs that we have to remember is they can only be used once. I can't use ID header more than once in the document. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to make a couple more. I'm going to call this one content and this one footer. Okay. Copy this, paste it, change these to content and footer. And I'm going to start by changing the colors of each one. I'm going to call this, make this one silver, and I'm going to make this one gold. Okay. If I save it, refresh it, we should see 3 separate divs. You'll notice they stack right on top of one another because they don't come with any margin built in like paragraph does. They don't come with any kind of padding built in like any of the other ones do. So we can add any kinds of styles to these we want. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to add margin, padding, border. I'm going to show you how to make them specific widths and maybe even specific heights.